Okay, my friends, another day, another video, and today's topic is a topic I kind of want to avoid, but I think it's hard to avoid it if you're going to make a channel about the human condition, about things that are important and things that are good for humanity and things that are pure poison. And today's topic is about porn. Porn has been basically a part of my life since as long as I can remember. I think the first time I can clearly remember seeing porn is when I went to preschool, and we found this magazine called Aktuelt Rapport. It was a magazine that existed many years ago, and I opened it up and I saw a couple of tits, and reaction was pretty spontaneous. And yeah, I remember it clearly, how should we say gratification, that it was instant gratification. Now, I did have a conversation with a friend of mine a few months ago, because porn is one of the things that I think is really poison for us as a species. It is poison on the personal level. It hijacks your dopamine system. It drowns out your normal reaction to normal sex. It can actually hijack, great science show that it can actually hijack your dopamine receptors for ordinary sex so much, if you binge it or do it too much, that in the end you won't even react to normal sex, or you see a girl or something like that and you just won't react. Now, can't say I have experienced that, but I have experienced the numbness, the sadness, and I would call it addiction to binging porn, and at the same hating it intensely, because I know, and this is very important, I know that most girls and also men that actually are in the porn business has been abused as children in some way, often sexually and often rejected from parents, stuff like that, bullied. Many things leads to people going to porn. And as my favorite porn star in the 80s, Tracy Lords, did say in an interview I saw a while ago, when I did some research into this, she said, "Do you really think something good happened to me that resulted in me doing porn movies when she was like 16 or 17 years old? She was even directing them. Do you really think something positive happened to me in my childhood that made me do this?" And that was just, it's just, and that is actually what you see when you see interviews of former porn stars, if you can use that word. It's actually a ridiculous word. It's the same story. I was a whore, I was abused, I was not me, it was drug addiction and all kinds of shit that leads them to do this. Now, I had this discussion with my friend, and I was telling him that I really, really hated porn, and it was one of the things that I really don't want to do because of the reasons I just said. And he said to me, "I just had to find the right porn." And I said, what? The right porn? Yeah, he had found some porn that was some amateur stuff, some webcam stuff or something. And I said, well, you don't know what the reasons is why these girls or these people are doing this webcam stuff. You don't know that. And he said he didn't pay for it. And I said, it kind of makes it even worse, because if you are watching a webcam girl putting things inside her for tips or whatever, and you're watching it without paying, it's even worse, because this girl are trying to make a living out of this. And this is not an attack on the girls or the men in the porn industry, which is just acting, or maybe I would attack the people who are exploiting them, but that's another topic in this video later. So, and it hit me because I've also done that myself. I have actually watched webcam porn and hiding behind the fact that I never bought sex, I never paid for it, and it just hit me, you know. So that should make it better. Should that make it better that I didn't pay for it? No, it doesn't make it better. It actually makes it worse. As I said, it makes it worse. And I also said to him that, you know, I just had to find the right kind of porn, the kind of porn. And I said to him that if there is some kind of porn I haven't seen, it is porn made by a different species, on a different planet, on a different solar system, and probably in a different galaxy, okay? Because I can't really think of any kind of porn I haven't seen. I'm a very nosy person, so I like to see things for myself. Of all the shit I've seen, and I've seen a lot of shit, I've seen people do things that in the beginning made me vomit, almost vomit, until I could actually watch the tapestry in the background without reacting much. And it didn't change anything with my sexuality. It is basically exactly the same that it's always been. I'm turned on by girls, women with small waist and big butts, and the kind that looks like they can make beautiful babies. And also my first girlfriend, she was actually from Argentina. She had that shape, she was like this and with this butt, so it was a nice start. And we were like 15 years old, 14, 15, and kind of had sex everywhere. So it was kind of fun, still remember it. But porn, you know, in the beginning, it was I'm 52, so in the beginning it was these, I remember clearly, it was the Danish sign movies, you know, the in Tyrenstein and all these sign, it's kind of funny movies with some eroticism. And then you have the American production, you know, with Tracy Lords and other people. And it was kind of a small thing back then. It was videos, and it was kind of hard to get. You had to buy them. In Norway it was basically impossible to get anything that wasn't censored. They were cutting out all the sexual organs, because in Norway we had this law, maybe it's still there, that you can't actually show sexual organs in action. So yeah, and then it moved on to, then when internet started, it moved on to internet porn, and of course that made it explode. I remember also clearly, it must be 20 years ago, I had a discussion with a friend of mine about porn, and it was after I actually lost the belief in free will. When you lose your belief in free will, you realize that people doesn't necessarily choose what they do. And when it comes to porn, we know that sexual abuse, we know that abuse in general leads many girls, many people towards porn. It also leads them into drug addiction, into alcoholism, into very broken mind, almost soul murder actually, that leads to a warped sense of self, a warped sense of sexuality. I have had about 4 girls in my life that actually have experienced sexual abuse or some abuse, and some of them just had no inkling of who they were, and their personality could move between sweet as candy and vicious in a heartbeat, and there were great underlying problems with these things. And I've just seen it up close how abuse actually affects girls, and it's not a pretty sight. And when we know that the porn industry is full of abuse victims, for me it is very important to come to a point where you actually see yourself from the outside. And I had come to that point because, as in Donald Duck, when he has this devil and the angel on his shoulder, they used to fight like crazy. And I have diaries from many years ago, like 20-25 years ago, where I discussed this with myself, and I attack myself all the time for being weak enough to go back to it and back and forth and having the discussion. But as my introspection has evolved, this angel has become bigger and bigger. And it's almost like an alcohol addiction or food addiction. If something triggers me to go back and watch porn, this angel pops up and start talking to me into my ear. No, I'm not schizophrenic or anything. And I actually starts to see myself watching something that is both morally and ethically wrong, and I start to feel bad, and I just can't, and that is a very good thing, and that is what happens when we evolve introspection to that level. You actually start to see yourself from the outside in a way that forces you to make the right decisions. Okay, there's something. I would never buy sex. I would never purchase another human being and hide behind her free will and then use her as a cum bucket to squirt into just because it was a convenient thing to do. For me, every human being on the planet is me. That girl is my daughter. That girl is me. Every human being on this planet is me. And I wouldn't do that to any human being. And as I said many times, the day I have to pay for sex, that is the day I stop having it. And I don't even care. Sex is not even that important that I would actually use another person like that. I have friends who actually buy sex, and I have had extreme discussions with them about this. And I come back to, I asked a friend of mine, well, what if it was your daughter? And he just replied, well, it isn't. And it just baffled me, because it should be so obvious that this girl is as important as a human being as if it was your own daughter or your own family or your own friends or you or whatever. But it don't seem to penetrate. And I have wondered, it's not that people who buy sex are psychopaths. They are not. But there are a certain collective sociopathic tendency in society where we don't really see other people as people, and therefore we are able to use them to feel some short buzz, some pleasure, and at the same time we are destroying ourselves, because the same person I've had this discussion with, I asked him if he ever felt happy after doing it, or also watching too much porn, and he said, especially porn, he said no, after watching a lot of porn he just felt empty. And personally I've had the same experience, that porn doesn't lead to happiness. It doesn't lead you to a point where you actually feel happy after doing it. You don't feel more happy doing that than being hungover or eating way too much sugar so you feel like shit. There is nothing good in it. It has absolutely nothing to offer. And that is, at the same time, it actually steals it hijacks your dopamine system and make you into a jerk off, basically. That's a good word. So anyway, I was discussing this thing with that friend back 20 years ago. And we were actually driving to Sweden because he was going to buy some food. And I was arguing with him all the way, trying to explain to him that the girls in porn, or the people in porn, are not doing it because of free will. They are usually abuse victims. They are drug addicts. They are addicted to attention because of the abuse. They are addicted to buying shit because of abuse or some other things that happened to them in their childhood. And the same goes for the prostitutes. Most prostitutes are drug addicts or poor people who can't afford getting food into their mouth. And I was discussing this with him for hours, hammering this into his head. And a couple of days after, he sent me a mail and said, "Knut, you have taken porn away from me," because I had showed him that you couldn't hide behind the notion of free will and hide behind that the girl that you are basically using for money haven't chosen to be in the situation she is. And there's a lot of people who would argue against that and say, well, it's the oldest occupation in history. But then I just reply, well, poverty and slavery is also the oldest thing, some of the oldest thing in history, the oldest occupation in history. And we do know that also a lot of the girls in porn, the internet porn, the webcam porn, the prostitution, is basically slavery. You can't know which one of them. If you could even say that some people say that there are such a thing as a happy prostitute or a prostitute that are really choosing this for herself, and there is no cause, no abuse, no reason, nothing. You couldn't know who, okay? You couldn't know who. So if you can't know who it is, who is the happy prostitute, you can't do it. And for me, it's basically watching a person, taking pleasure from watching a person that is destroying their lives, or her life in my case, and taking pleasure from it. And it's, you just can't, I can't do it anymore without feeling like shit. I even feel like shit talking about it, because this is one of the things I'm really not proud of. Yeah, I wrote down some words, and I talked about who is in porn. I talked about why we should not watch porn, morals, ethics, and personal responsibility. I think we have a personal responsibility to drop porn, and there's a reason for that. We can't ban porn because we can't, despite that I don't believe in free will, we have to act as if we have free will. And if we have as long as we are not doing any people harm, as long as nobody is forced to do something, we can't take away people's freedom to destroy their lives or to use themselves or their bodies or anything to earn a living. But what we can do is stop feeding the beast. And there are certain things we also could do. We could make sure that prostitutes who are hooked on drugs got their treatment. We could do everything we can to stop abuse and stop trafficking. We could stop paying for it. And we can make sure that every human being on the planet has enough resources to tap into the depth of their potential. Because what is also so sad when we are watching porn, we are watching a human being, and as Carl Sagan says in The Pale Blue Dot, we are the way for the universe to know itself. And consciousness, in my opinion, conscious beings like us, with introspection, with the potential of greatness, to see so many people being destroyed by drugs, by porn, by prostitution, by all this shit being destroyed, is just not a thing I'm able to watch without screaming. And so the best way to stop prostitution and porn is basically to stop watching it, to take responsibility for other human beings. It's like, do not treat others as you do not want to be treated yourself. It is the basis of Christianity. I'm an atheist, and you also find it in the Analects of Confucius. You find it in, you go back to the Stoics, to Seneca, to Epicurus, to Marcus Aurelius, and you find the same thing. Marcus Aurelius talks about these things, the Stoics talks about these things, how the people of Rome never get enough blood. They never get enough slaves to slaughter or slaves to have sex with. They never get enough short bus. And it is slowly destroying us in the same way that it destroyed Rome. We are in a process where pornography is one of the biggest economies in the world. And being a person that I've seen basically everything, there is no limit. For some reason, there seems to be no limit to what human beings are capable of doing just to get this short buzz. And I can't see that it can in any way make any person happy, if you actually buy a girl and you use her up against some dumpster in the city, and you go home and you kiss your daughter goodnight after doing something like that, there is something really profoundly wrong with you. And I'm not saying you're a psychopath, but you are probably slightly sociopathic, or maybe just extremely ignorant, and you are hiding behind the first premise, which is free will that doesn't exist. I mean, anyone who has been in love or had an addiction know that free will does not exist. It's just a false premise. It doesn't exist. And that is what leads to us overeating, getting fat, getting depressed, watching porn, throwing away our lives on bullshit. So if we could actually do something about this, it would make the world a much better place. Now, I wrote down here number 5, the future of porn and how to battle it. And I talked about the battle. So what is the future of porn? What is the future of humanity? Are we really gonna have webcam porn from the moons around Jupiter? Are we going to have child abuse on Mars? Are we going to have internet porn and webcams from, from the moon or whatever? Are we going to take this shit with us into space, into our future? Because our future is in space. What are we going to do? Are we going to continue drowning in short bus? Or are we going to take responsibility for our fellow human beings and start acting like human beings? There is also some silver lining. When you stop watching porn, you are getting your natural fantasy back. And you don't fantasize, that's my experience anyway. You don't fantasize from the pictures you've seen. You actually get it from experiences, or maybe being in love with a girl, or something you saw that day, or whatever. So, and a good I would say a good thing to do is to wait until the body tells you when you have to jerk off, and you have to do it less, and you will feel way better when you do it from your own, the pictures you have in your head, on your own imagination. So yeah, I hope this explains a little bit why I hate porn, why I do everything in my power to stop watching it. It is actually just a question about how you view other people. If you actually view other people as if they were yourself or somebody you love, basic empathy, basic sympathy, that is the way. That is the thing that will actually kill porn and make you into a better person. So cheers for that, and cheers for porn. No, not cheers for porn, of course. Cheers for the death of porn. Yeah, it's cheers. Okay, see you in the next video. Just have to do it like this. Okay, remember to check out my painting tutorials on my second channel. You find a link in description. And also check out my Patreon if you want to support my artwork or my channel. And I see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.